Okay, so let's talk essay mastery. So, since we've all kind of, I'm just, we've all been, putting our own diligent studies in, I would love to just maybe get some opening questions. So, Jabin, Moira, Sreya, Navia, Prisha, hello, pleasure to meet you. Rohan, always good to see you back, my man. So, let's start with it's really funny because, something as simple as the essay portion of a test can come with so many like myths, so many, so many like, misnomers. I'm definitely interested in knowing what we know, what we think, and what are we concerned with for the SAT and ACT essays. Any opening questions? Anything that's maybe on our mind? Hmm?
I would say I'm concerned with like doing it like in the time constraints. Like I'm
Hmm.
pretty good at writing, but not like under time pressure.
I know, isn't it kind of funny when you take AP English and they'll give you 2 weeks to work on an essay, and then the SAT, the College Board's like, okay, 50 minutes, go, do it all. Yeah, that is an understandable concern. Now, fortunately, one of the things that we are going to cover today is we're going to cover the structure of the test and the outline, what the in the rubric, so we'll know exactly what the College Board is looking for. So if we know exactly what we're going to tackle, it's going to make life a lot easier for us. That way, we're not kind of fumbling in the dark. Unfortunately, if you're taking the SAT essay, then you do have a lot of leeway there because the essay is very straightforward. So time's a little bit more merciful on this, than say if you're writing like a broad essay. And in fact, the SAT essay now is actually much more merciful than the essay that your older siblings might have taken when the test was out of 2400. Before they'd ask a vague philosophical question like, "Is creativity good?" 50 minutes, go. And that was a little bit difficult. Okay. So anything else? Anything else maybe on our mind as far as like concerns with the essay? I've heard this, that kind of thing. Hmm. All right. Well, the next big thing that I'm kind of wondering is where we are. Are we on Team SAT or Team ACT? So I'm going to drop a little poll option here. So tell me, which team are you on? Team SAT? Team ACT? Both? Neither? Maybe you just can't decide. They both sound so exciting. All right. So overwhelmingly SAT. I kind of figured as much, given we're the West Coast, we took the SAT class. So let's start. Let me just adjust my nice Pittsburgh Prep hoodie. We got some new swag. Now, what I would start with is we're going to talk about like what the essay's goal is. The first thing we want to talk about is kind of like know thine enemy. The goal of the SAT is simply that it is a critical reasoning test, no different than the SAT and ACT. They are not testing our ability to be like a potent or a powerful writer. They are not testing our vocabulary. They are not testing your knowledge, how many examples you can come up with. What they are testing is your ability to. I guess we can run through the list. We're talking about the ability to conceptualize. Oh, sorry about that. They're testing our ability to conceptualize, our ability to analyze, meaning can we break something down? Can we take an idea and sort of quantify it? Can we question things if we know why something happens? And our ability, and this is the big one for the SAT especially, to evaluate ideas. See, when we talk about the SAT essay, we're looking at something that's a little bit different. And the challenge with the essay section here is a lot of students come in not knowing really what to expect. Keep in mind, first off, that the SAT and ACT essays are a little bit different than what we normally deal with. So when you deal with like an academic essay, think about like what are most of the essays that you write in school like? What do they resemble? So like Rohan, when you think of like a stereotypical essay in school, what does it look like for you?
Usually there's some type of like text, and then they just ask you a question and analyze the text and provide examples.
Ooh, let's go the DBQ. There's a man who's taking some A push in his day. Wonderful. So Rowan's actually right. That's actually fairly similar to what we're going to deal with in the SAT rubric. So we have a little bit of an advantage there. So when I think essay, I always think about like those classic English essays. Tell us what Gatsby's motivation are. What symbolism is Charlotte Bronte using here, that kind of thing. And that's really not what the College Board and what the ACT are interested in. So if we're looking at the idea of, even like an A-push essay, there's usually like an exploration of a particular theme, or and a lot of scoring on like, what facts we use to defend, what mechanics do we have. And it's really funny because mechanics don't really play in as much to the essay score as everyone assumes them to be. Now, I'm not saying you need to like put comma places everywhere, just dropping semicolons in wrong random spots, but we are more focused on the construction of the argument. When you do like a college admissions essay, for instance, we're demonstrating the idea of like growth, reflection on life, commitment, and those are, that's not the goal here. No one's reading your SAT essay and saying like, well, Soraya seems like a well-rounded individual. I'm sure she'll be fine at our college. No, we're looking for something a little bit different. So our goal is demonstrating critical reasoning. Our goal is, can I analyze an argument and break it down? Now, one question that I was getting asked a lot in the summer, and something that has a little bit more of a complicated answer, is the idea of, should I even take the essay, right? Now, when we talk about should I take the essay, the short answer is probably not. You probably are not going to have to take it. It can help you, it definitely can, but there are other things to consider as well. You probably know already if you're taking the essay to flex to add a benefit to your score, or if you're taking the essay because you have to. There's a very small list of schools that actually explicitly require the essay portion. So, in a bit of quick research, if you're applying to the University of California, maybe now you decide like, yeah, I need some sunshine in my life. I'm kind of tired of Pittsburgh weather. I think I'm heading to, UC Berkeley. Totally reasonable. Chapin says something like, you know what? I think West Point's for me. I want to, get a go buzz cut and join. No, not particularly. I don't think you actually have to do the buzz cut anymore at West Point. I think I think it just has to be like a well-managed ponytail. But Morozov, no, not feeling the GI Jane. I'm not judging, but you know, I personally know I couldn't do it. Now, in this case, schools even like Howard and Kentucky State do require the essay, so it's worth knowing that you can look at particular schools. It's also worth knowing that certain programs within school set more stringent requirements. So it wouldn't be uncommon to say, like, if I was applying to, I believe, like CMU is a good example. You don't have to take the subject test to get into CMU. However, if you're going to apply to certain programs at CMU, you do. So if I can't just jump right into the engineering program like YOLO without demonstrating at least like a strong score in mathematical reasoning. A few schools actually do have a recommendation for the essay, so you can actually get your like Duke is a good example. You can actually get your application weighed preferably if you have a strong essay score at Duke. Similarly, Allegheny College, which is a local, Allegheny is actually a pretty legit, local liberal arts school. Juilliard, for those of us that are more musically inclined. Lehigh, Morehouse, Purdue, SUNY. There are a couple schools that do recommend the essay explicitly. Now, as far as the idea of, can the essay help? Well, a strong essay score definitely can. One thing that really shocked me that was posted by our college admissions essay guru, Robert, is that 16% decrease in enrollment in the Ivy League schools this year, which I found personally like, okay, good on them for taking coronavirus seriously, but secondly, it's going to make things even more competitive. So I would say let's look for every edge that we can get. Strong SAT score, strong GPA, a sterling essay, and more importantly, having that essay score that says, yo, I can reason through this essay well. So what do you think? Any questions on like whether I should be taking the essay or not? We feel pretty good on like whether we like. I'm assuming everyone's here because they kind of were curious or thinking like, yeah, I'm probably going to do that. A couple people chasing that thick 12. Okay, I see you. I see you. Now, let's talk about the differences, though. I know we're mostly on the SAT page, but we did have a few SAT or ACT curious students. So let's talk about the differences between the essay scores. So the first thing to consider is that when I'm dealing with the SAT essay, let's just get through the basics. Okay, 50 minutes. And your big goal here is you're going to be synthesizing an analysis of another essay. So your job is not to construct a view. Psh, we don't care about your opinions in general. We are simply going to have you analyze another essay DBQ style. In fact, we can generally predict where the essay is going to come from. So I would say expect your essay to be coming from a fairly respected upscale source that isn't overly academic. You're not going to be evaluating something that came out of the pages of, the Lancet, or you're not going to be looking at something from like the, JAMA. It's going to be something from like the New York Times, probably like, Chicago Tribune, Condé Nast. And I'm actually calling out the New York Times because there have been multiple instances, like it's one of the most common prompts I've seen. Expect like a speech from Jimmy Carter, So expect something like mildly upscale but not overly challenging as a reading piece. I would say expect nuance in the argument, but don't expect difficulty in the argument. Ooh, I'm also now seeing that I should have accented Condé Nast. My bad. Oh, put some respect on that name. There we go. Now, another piece that we want to consider is when you are giving your analysis, you have to demonstrate your analysis with proof from the given claim, unlike the ACT. So when we talk about the idea of your opinion is irrelevant, I don't mean to crush your hopes and dreams, but your opinion doesn't matter. In fact, there have been a couple of instances where you might read a prompt that you strongly disagree with. In general, that's probably not going to happen often. You're going to be reading things like, why should we save libraries? Why does the dark matter? Um, why is it important that we save music programs in schools? You're probably not going to see a lot of people that are very like anti-music, but regardless, we should not have an opinion on the topic. Our job is solely to break down the author's argument, and mainly we're going to do that with stylistic and rhetorical devices. So when we talk about the SAT essay, we're going to see a lot of sorry, a lot of fairly formulaic material. Just like when you're playing Clue and it was, Colonel Mustard in the, in the library with the candlestick. When we deal with the SAT essay, you're going to see a lot of, the author creates this effect in his audience with this rhetorical device as seen in this example. If you focus on that, you'll generally be more than fine. You'll generally be more than fine. Now, as far as the ACT goes, things might seem a little bit I want to say tenuous here, but it's actually a lot of fun. So the ACT essay is actually a little bit shorter. Oh, I thought I was making a pen mark there. Sorry about that. The ACT essay is a little bit shorter. We get 40 minutes. Yikes. But it's also going to fly by. The ACT essay is a little bit interesting though because you're going to synthesize your own view on a topic. So we'll see in an example later. But what's going to happen with the ACT is they'll give you a general prompt, and the prompt might be something simple like mm, uh, college athletics have a tenuous place in the collegiate system, and they'll give you three perspectives on that issue. One might be that college sports benefit a well-rounded student. The second might be that college sports unnecessarily distract from academia. The third might be that college sports bring in a lot of money, which is controversial. And you can either ignore all three opinions, you can you can add them to your point of view. But your job is, regardless of the perspectives, to have a general view. So you have to at least acknowledge, I would say acknowledge at least two of the general views in your topic, and then you can actually disagree. You could say, for instance, that there are multiple incorrect perspectives on college sports. But your goal is you have to put your argument in conversation and acknowledge, synthesize, and use those three perspectives. You can use reasoning, but the important thing is here is the difference. You can bring outside examples into the ACT essay, and it's really actually kind of I find personally kind of interesting because there's no fact checking even. I'm not saying that you should talk about how President Abraham Lincoln rode in on a dinosaur to win the Battle of Gettysburg, but you can in fact kind of lean into your examples a little bit. So the ACT essay is interesting because you can come up with your own point of view, you can get a little creative, and use outside examples. With the SAT essay, it's a little more straightforward, but you're also a bit limited. You're boxed in as far as what our job is. Our job is to exercise the analytical task by breaking down not just what the author says, but how the author makes that argument and for what reasons the author makes that argument. Okay, so open season. What do you think? Any questions on the difference between the two exams? Just saying, feel free to fire away.
Is the ACT one like harder because you have to like come up with your own idea? Like, it seems like it would take more thinking.
It would. I find personally that the ACT essay does require a little bit more rigor, anecdotally, because you do have to come up with outside examples. Now, the thing is, your examples are generally going to be things. They're not going to give you a lot of like esoteric topics. They're going to be things that are very familiar. Libraries, technology. I think one of my favorite prompts is the role of technology in the workplace. Like, are robots good for society? And in those kinds of cases, you can draw from a wide range. We can talk about, you can use fictional examples, we can use real life examples, you know, By fictional, hopefully you're not just completely making it up off the cuff. But yeah, I would say, Chapin, if you struggle with examples, that can be a little bit of a dangerous thing. But keep in mind, like you, I would say your social studies classes will probably be a good piece to draw on here. With the SAT, yeah, you might think I would say it might be easier from that point of view if we say that you don't have to bring your own examples to the table. You're solely going off of what the author said. But it also means you need to be familiar with more rhetoric than the ACT. So with the ACT, we need to think like, okay, how can I, bring the Battle of Constantinople in as an example here? With the SAT, we better be familiar with things like the rhetorical pyramid. So we talk about things like pathos, ethos, and logos. Are we well versed in those topics? If we're going to flex on things like claim, evidence, and warrant, that would be something that we definitely want to do. Even smaller pieces, like if I want to talk about like what are the most popular rhetorical devices, you best come correct if you're going to talk about things like allusion, repetition, strong word choice, parallel structure. Yeah, and it's not a difficult task, but it's one of those things where I think it might be easier for a lot of students because you can actively review as you follow through on your topic. Hmm. Okay, so yeah, I'd say the examples might add a degree of difficulty, but it can also be a little more freeing, particularly if you're a creative student. Uh, what else do we think, Rockstar? Is there anything else that has us curious?
Do we need to know like the pyramid that you guys mentioned?
Ooh, honestly, I don't like the idea of students using pathos, ethos, and logos in their essays by name because it can seem a little bit clunky and formulaic. But I would say what you want to think about it would be like what those things represent. So if we talk about things like, if we talk about pathos, think about the root word there, pathetic. Pathetic doesn't just mean something is awful, it means something that evokes emotion. When you call someone pathetic, you are literally saying, you are so bad that it makes me feel emotional. Like you actually bring out like sympathy in me. Like, oh, it's so bad. So pathos is the idea of emotional appeal. So why don't we just even throw this? We'll throw this one out to the class. How can I evoke an emotional appeal in a written paper? How can I get an emotional response from my audience? Hmm.
Maybe like a sad anecdote.
Ooh, there we go. Heart wrenching personal stories. Yeah. Think subject matter. Oh, think of the children. Think about how we can really lean into diction. We can use particularly emotional terms. If I want to try to fire someone up or get my audience scared or angry or hopeful, those are things that we can accomplish by using different terminologies. Did I teach my students or did I castigate and admonish them? You can twist the narrative to your fitting based on your word choice. Was a task, a welcome challenge or was it intimidating? So we can definitely look at word choice. We can look at subject matter, the particular examples that we have. Let's talk about the next piece. The E in our rhetorical triangle is ethos. Now, ethos, think ethical. Think about, more importantly, the idea of trust, credibility. You know, do we think our source is fake news, or do we actually trust and believe them? So, Sreya, what might be a way that an author sways you to trust them?
They could use like uh quotes maybe from a reliable source.
There we go. You don't have to trust me, but maybe you trust my sources. I might be a nobody, but if I start dropping quotes like, hey, check out the study I found from Harvard, or like, ooh, according to NASA statistics, next thing you know, I'm a credible author. Hmm. Tarek, what else? What makes you think that an author is trustworthy?
If they're like talking about medicine and they're like a well-known doctor.
Ooh, establishing credentials. Yes, exactly. No one's going to take medical advice from, Josh the SAT tutor, but would you take it from, Dr. Doogie Howser, MD? Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Prisha, what else? Is there anything else you can think of that might establish credibility with an author? Someone that help you build some trust.
Evidence from history.
Ooh, someone who shows a strong knowledge in the subject. Ding, ding, ding. Yes. In fact, just being a doctor alone, that's kind of sketchy. But if they can bring out some well-versed advice, or as history has shown, yeah, building historical analogies works fantastically. Is there anything else I could do to maybe build trust? Hmm. Ooh, what about something like conceding an argument, examining the other side? Giving a qualified thesis, yes. It's true opponents may say this, and you think, ooh, that author is fair. I like that. So there are plenty of things we could do to establish trust. And lastly, let's talk about the idea of logos. Now, logos might seem like the obvious one, but can actually be a little bit more in depth. Logic. So, Navia, what do you think makes an author logical? Like when you think like, ooh, that's a logical approach.
Using data. Well, using like data and statistics.
Oh, I love it. When someone's got those statistics on deck, yes. And notice how you can get the pathos, or sorry, the logos ethos combo, the old 1-2. I not only have statistics, but they are from a well-reputed source. You're not just quoting BuzzFeed, boom. Even though BuzzFeed actually does do some pretty decent journalism these days. Okay. Anything else I can do to build a logical essay? Be Spock? Live long and prosper? Ooh, what about the idea of having like a logical conclusion? This is true, and this is true. Therefore, this is true. We can appeal to common sense. We can appeal to ignore your emotions. Simply think about the reasoning behind it. Yeah, there are ways we can definitely be more logical. So what we want to think about is, if we can identify the methods of use here. We're going to see this a little bit later when we talk about the analytical task, but there are definitely ways that we can find stylistic and rhetorical devices. There are plenty more, and we'll keep pulling and keep quizzing throughout because I really, really want to see our class prosper on this front. Let's see here. I guess we should move on to our next point, which would be actually taking a look at the essay rubric. So that's actually a very interesting piece. Not a lot of people study the rubric for this test, which I find kind of crazy. Think about this. If we flip the script, if you look at an everyday class, have you ever written a paper before you knew what your teacher was looking for and how it was going to be scored? No, those are all commonplace questions, right? When's this due? How many points is it? What are you looking for? Those are common questions. But when it comes to the SAT essay and the ACT essay, people just walk in the test like, YOLO! Be honest, how many people have taken a look at the SAT essay rubric that they plan on taking? Exactly. Or, okay, how about this? A more acceptable answer, how many people figured like that Hunanai and Alexandra would be walking you through it at some point? Hey, I got you, fam. Gosh, I missed summer. You guys are great. Okay, so are we ready to move on to the actual rubric, or do we have any more questions about like the general overview of the exams? And remember, the only bad question is one that doesn't get asked out of fear. We're all here for the same thing, and if you ask the question, you might save your neighbor from having to ask it. Hmm? All right, there we go. So let's talk SAT essay. Now, I'm going to warn you though, trigger warning, this next slide is a little bit packed. I plan on toning it down in the next revision, but I did want you guys to see the full, thorough rubric. Okay? So, boom, here we go. Ah! Do me a favor for now, and one other thing is that we will in fact be sending out the recording of this of the presentation today, so you'll be able to pause at this screen and be like, oh, thank goodness. But I want you to focus over here right now on where your score comes from. So when we look at the idea of 24, what happens is we have 3 categories to focus on: raw, reading, analysis, and writing. Now, in each of those categories, your SAT scores will have a score of 1 to 4. And it's perfectly possible. In fact, the average score for like reading is like a 3. The average score for writing is a 3. The average analysis score is like a 2. Ugh. Now, on the general rubric scale, a 3 is considered like acceptable. 2 is below acceptable. 4 is outstanding. So most people they do okay with the reading section, they do okay with the writing section, and most people just do not do well with analysis. The vast majority do not. Now, I can tell you this because I actually had a friend who worked for the College Board. They recruit your teachers and professors over the summer. So she actually goes to, I think it was Utah last time, to do A push scoring. And they essentially just set all the scores in a room. You aren't even allowed to leave. They have someone come around with takeout menus for lunch. So you just pick on the cart you get. You don't really leave to use the restroom. They'll bring your food to you, so you don't leave with any potential information. And you only get like a couple of minutes with each essay. So what's going to happen is Judge 1 and Judge 2 will have the same scale, and they will tally the scores in each section. So each section has a score of 8 per category, so it gives you like 24 total points across the board. Now, do we feel okay with the idea of like the 2-judge system, like where those 24 points come from? Now, it is possible to get an odd number of scores. So if you got say a 3 for analysis from one judge and a 2 from analysis from the other, you could end up with a score of 5 out of 8 there. The minimum score you can get is a 2. You can't really award a 0 unless you are completely off topic or just illegible. Maximum score is an 8 for each of these 3 pieces. Now, when we talk about the idea, let's run through the rubric together. I do want to do this as a rather brief piece. We don't need to know every intimate detail of the rubric. So what I did was I pulled all of the points needed to score a perfect 4 in each category from one judge. So with the reading, the first thing we're going to see is the reading score is demonstrating what you read. You have to demonstrate a mastery. Yes, I have read and understood this topic well. So let's take a look at the bullet points. Our first bullet point, a thorough comprehension of the source text. So we can't miss an author's nuance. We can't say like, I kind of skimmed that paragraph. We need to understand the full argument that the author makes. Not a partial, not like a 10,000 foot overview. I can't say like War and Peace was about Russia. Just not how it works. It needs to be thorough. Now the second bullet point is going to be an interesting one. This is where things get really, really big. Shows an understanding of the text's central ideas, most important details, and how they interrelate. This is the important piece. Don't just tell me what the author said. We have to think about how the author's points came together. So if the author is arguing something like, public libraries are an essential resource because they aid the economically impoverished, they act as a free repository of information, and they are safeguards of the Dewey Decimal System. You need to figure out okay, how does the author put those points together into a coherent argument? Now, bullet point 3 is kind of interesting. Bullet point 3 is the idea the essay is free of errors of fact or interpretation. So what I would say is if you're used to flexing in this case, you know who you are. You can't do like a Marxist critique of the author's paper. Oh, they hit a little close to home for some of us. So keep in mind that there's like an official College Board interpretation. We're not judging the author, we are only interpreting the author's points. Now, where I want you to focus, because this is where you're going to get most of your points from, in my opinion, is the idea of skillful use of textual evidence. Oh! I would say that if you want, it's useless to have a powerful, thorough reading. You might kill this essay. You might recognize, ooh, this is a social science passage. I'm going to follow the system. I'm going to blueprint every paragraph. But even if you nail every blueprint, unless you can demonstrate that with strong use of quotation marks, paraphrasing, I would say go with both. You have to flex on your reader. The reader knows the material. They will have read the essay, but your job is to demonstrate that you know it. So don't just lean on the fact that I precisely summed the author's points up. You need to be able to give quotations and paraphrases of the author's important points. So think about it, it's not just enough to know it, you have to demonstrate it. So let's say this. How comfortable do we feel with the idea of the reading score thus far? fact, let's make sure we get some data points here. So, here we go. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are we feeling with the reading task, with the idea of demonstrating? Okay. Let's see. Okay. That is a nice normal distribution. Now we'll see some examples later. I actually have I have a couple of pieces that we're going to be looking at as far as SAT essay examples to demonstrate. Okay, here clearly is what the College Board had in mind for what constitutes a 4 as opposed to a 3. So the biggest things we need to focus on are: do we understand what the author is saying? Do we understand how the author's points relate? And did we demonstrate it with clear and thorough examples? Awesome. All right, now the next piece we're going to get into is the one that is the most challenging for almost everyone. Statistically, this is the hardest part of the SAT essay, so we're going to double down here. For the topic of analysis, they mentioned something called the analytical task, but the College Board doesn't define the analytical task for us. It is up to us to interpret this. The analytical task is we want to focus not on what the author says, but on how the author makes the case. We want to focus on how the author makes the case for their essay. So if we were going to talk about common rhetorical devices, we already talked about pathos, ethos, and logos, but there are plenty of others that we should bring up. Okay, if I was going to talk about an anecdote, for instance, what do you think of when you think of an anecdote? Navia, what comes to mind if you get into anecdotes?
Like making small notes about the paragraph.
Ooh. Oh, okay. Like annotate. Not thinking of annotation.
Oh, my bad.
No worries. The world is full of confusing root words and homophones, so that is not a problem. In fact, I would never feel bad for not knowing a word. I would see it as an opportunity to learn, right? No one feels bad about learning. Think about it this way. It's a weird shift in attitude, but I would definitely say that you should take every word that you don't know as an opportunity to be better and smarter than you were yesterday. No one walks around saying, if only my vocabulary was smaller. God, I wish I understood less. That's not us. We're not about that life. So when we talk about, actually, hey, what's up, annotation? Okay, so when we talk about an anecdote, we are talking about a personal story with a point. So, like, admittedly, my wife might be somewhat embarrassed to learn how often she and Chewbacca are used in class for anecdotes for various purposes, but it's actually true. So when we talk about the idea of like a personal, there we go, a personal story with a point, that's what we're getting at with an anecdote. So what we want to recognize is, why would an author use an anecdote in their writing? Why tell a story? What do we think?
Well, if it's from personal experience, which usually anecdotes are,
Mhm.
it can be like pretty hard to like disprove someone's personal experience.
Ooh, exactly. If someone gives like an opinion, emotion, or anecdote, you can't be like, no, you did not have a strong bond with your dog when you were a child. No, you did not learn the importance of the environment early on. But what I would say the important thing with an anecdote is, yeah, so we can say it's unprovable, unless like it's an election year. But also, it helps build, like I would say, this like a personal connection. Think about the idea of when someone shares an anecdote with you. It's kind of like a moment of vulnerability. You might sympathize a bit with your audience. So I want you to take a second and think about like what that would mean for us: pathos, ethos, or logos. We're going to take a quick 60-second break, guys. We'll be right back. I know we're kind of like half an hour into it, but I'll see you in like 1 minute. All right. All right. So, to get back into it, let me ask this. When I talk about using an anecdote, and we talk about that rhetorical pyramid, or the rhetorical triangle pyramid, whichever shape you want to go with, I guess triangle. Pyramid would imply that it's 3D. Would this be more of a pathos, ethos, or logos thing? Tarek, what do you think?
I would say more of a pathos thing.
Oh, build that emotional connection. Yeah, that's what's up. Now, could it be a logos thing? Or, oh, let's say this. Could it be an ethos thing? What do you think, Sreya? What do you think? Could you lean into ethos with an anecdote?
Um, I feel like the answer is yes, but
You're not feeling it.
no, because if ethos is credibility, then how can you just believe their story? I don't know.
Ah, like they could just be making it up. Well, I guess what we'd look at is when someone drops a personal anecdote, they're likely looking to build credibility by saying, "Look, I've experienced this." So this is like when your teacher tries to be cool, like, "Look, I was a teenager once." And it's like that's true based on the math, but you're probably trying to like make me feel more like identifiable, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So you could, even though I'm with you, sort of question, I don't want you just to take everyone's word at face value, especially these days, it could be fake news. But there we go. Now there's some other techniques that we could always use as well. If I want to talk about the idea of illusion, not illusion with an I, but this is not like a Harry Potter thing, Expecto Patronum. What is illusion with an A? Rohan, what do you think? Are you familiar with illusion with an A?
Isn't that where you like refer to something else inside of a text?
Ooh, yes. We refer to another. It could be like another text. I mean, think like movies are really popular. People drop like an inside joke with allusion. So we'll say like a reference to another. Let's say a reference to another work. And what we're going to think about is why would someone do this? Why would someone refer to another work? Why would someone make like a Lord of the Rings joke or a Harry Potter joke inside of like an SAT essay clinic? Chapin, what do you think?
I feel like they do it for a lot of reasons. Like maybe they're trying to appeal to like a greater demographic, or maybe like again like establish credibility in the sense that you're connecting like your own work to something that's well known. Yeah.
You're exactly right. So I can go for credibility. I can go for straight up audience appeal. This might even make you appear like more knowledgeable in general. So even if you didn't know precisely, like I'm not sure what they're referring to, but like referring to like works of ancient lore, if it could still make you seem like a particularly insightful reader. And also, yeah, most of the time it's just like, kind of like when someone drops an inside joke in conversation. They're doing it because they want to appear knowledgeable, they're doing it because they want to appeal to a certain audience, and they want to show that they are well read. So it establishes, I would say, probably a little bit of ethos. It could establish a little bit of logos. All right, wonderful. Okay, we have a couple of other pieces we can use. Let's talk about the use of statistics. 3 out of 2 students do not understand statistics when they are presented with false work. Yeah, that poem was awful. But in this case, it's still kind of an important piece. So what I'm going to think about is like what the use of statistics would mean to us as analyzers of a particular piece of work. What's the point of using statistics? What do you think? Prisha, why would you drop some stats on somebody?
It's a form of credibility.
Ooh, there we go. Okay, so statistics are just straight up establishing credibility, and also to the point where like it's I'd say unimpeachable, unassailable, not quite, but we're looking for the idea of bolstering the argument. See, it's not just me that believe this. I have evidence for it. Boom. Now we can also bring up some other pieces. Let's go with like. Now I don't want you guys to get bogged down in arguing metaphor or simile, because it's like a swamp. Now, in the case of metaphor and simile, are we familiar with the idea of metaphor and simile? The idea of using vivid imagery that alludes to something else, or trying to create an image in. So the goal here is like put an image in the reader's mind. If you use a strong enough metaphor, you don't even have to argue well because the example will do all of the heavy lifting and argue for you, which is really cool if you think about it. Okay, let's see. Here's some other things we should talk about. So imagery, symbolism. Ooh, it's not just in math. Not hyperbola, but hyperbole. Oh, wait. There we go. All right. Tarek, what does it mean if someone engages in hyperbole? Have you heard that before?
Yeah, so like they exaggerate something.
Ah. All right. So hyperbole is when you engage in the best exaggeration. Think like this is almost like a Donald Trump thing, right? It is the best chocolate cake potentially in the history of chocolate cakes ever. So why would we do this? Because we want to. Well, what's the point? Why would someone exaggerate? Think about just the idea of reader engagement. Like if you read hyperbole, even if you think it's false, like that can't be right. Does it not? Do you not read a little more closely to even prove the author wrong? Do we not sometimes find it amusing and keep reading? If we describe a prom date as like I was my cheeks were so red they could be seen from the International Space Station. It amuses the reader and engages them. Okay, and I guess the last couple of pieces we could maybe look at would be, okay. Ooh, there are a few more we can go into here. We should talk about the idea of irony. So, I know everyone heard that Alanis Morissette song. Irony, referring to is when we what? Refer to the opposite, right? So irony is when we expect one thing and poof, we get the other. Now, why would we use irony? That's a good question. What effect would irony have on our audience? Let's say this. Irony kind of helps to connect with the reader. It makes the reader think a little more deeply. We think like, what? That's not what happened here. So I'd say similarly, irony forces a closer reading, and it can help emphasize what we see as a message. Let's see. We get some other pieces. Juxtaposition. Speed things along. So juxtaposition, when we contrast two ideas. So juxtaposition would be like if I had to stand next to like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He's gonna tower over me. He's gonna lean his elbow on the top of my head. Nah, I'm the governor. I'm rich and tall and strong, unlike this puny SAT instructor. So in this case, irony forces your audience to think critically. It forces us to think about, okay, ooh, what is the contrast here? Like, oh, dang, there's a heavy contrast. There must be a meaning for it. We can talk about that. We can talk about the idea of tone, like the author's voice. Tone forces us to think about like how the author is arguing. We can talk about things like we said, repetition. When the author repeats a point, it must be important. Why do we repeat choruses and songs? Because we want them to stick into the listener's head. In the same way, repetition forces an idea to stick in the reader's head. And of course, everyone's favorite from SAT grammar, parallelism. Boom! By making ideas and sentences parallel, we make it easier for the audience to remember and cue them back up. Now, this is not an exclusive list, but what we have here is a set of ideas that we should consider with the analytical task. These are tools in the author's toolbox to help the author build a case. Oh, come on. How do I get that to work? There we are. Sorry, guys. There we go. Now, each of these is going to be part of the analytical task. So I want to think about, does everyone feel comfortable as far as like recognizing the portions of this list? So how comfortable do you feel recognizing things like anecdote, statistic, hyperbole, irony, and delusion? Maybe not all of them, but do you feel comfortable at least recognizing most of them? All right. Average response is a 4. Mode was a 4. Medium was a 4. Perfectly normal answer. That's how we like it. Okay. I'd like it to be all 5s, but I'll take what I can get. Now let's talk about what this analysis task means. So first off, we talk about the idea of, okay, can you recognize each of these pieces? Let me just move this over. Can we recognize each of these tasks, each of these concepts? The second thing that I want to think about is, can I evaluate and support the claim? So the second bullet point here, we want to offer an evaluation of use of evidence, reasoning, stylistic techniques. So really just we're saying, can you identify the things that we just talked about? So can we look at the author's use of evidence? Can we look at their reasoning? Can we look at their elements, like these things? And can you evaluate them? So I'd say when we talk about this idea of evaluation, this is where the money's at. It's not just enough to say the author does this. Like we said, you need to have a structure. And this is something that I bank on for getting a higher essay score for the analysis piece. You need to be able to say the author uses anecdote, or like the author uses the anecdote about falling in a well as a child to, I don't know, build a personal connection with the audience, build sympathy, and show that they understand fear, things like that. When you look at any of these things, we should be able to think not just the author uses this technique to do this and create this effect on the reader. This is a boilerplate sort of just generalized way that we can use the analytical task. You need to think about the author uses this, like in this case, to make this happen for the audience. That's analysis for us. Now, the other piece we talked about, you need to also provide support for your claims. So it's not just enough to say the author does it. Can you back it up? I would say think about the idea here of like paraphrasing, quotations. Go sparse with the quotations. Quotations are like spices. It's very easy to go into overkill. Keep it small. Keep it relatively thorough. Good. Okay, and last but not least, focus consistently on the features that are most relevant. So you also have to be able to prioritize. If the author uses, 8 instances of hyperbole and juxtaposition, don't focus on the beginning of the past when they said, when I worked for NASA. Now, admittedly, the analytic task is a tricky one, so it's probably going to be a little easier to understand this when we see examples of it in action. What do you think? Are we feeling all right with analysis? Any questions on the analytical task? Open season. Feel free to PM, feel free to unmute, global chat, do as you will, but I want to make sure that we have a powerful comprehension before we move on. What do we think?
Is there like a way to go kind of close read it too closely? Like I know kind of like in English classes a lot, you kind of word by word, and you could even analyze punctuation and really small details like that. So is it smarter to stick to these kinds of pieces rather than that kind of specificity, or could that be a good thing?
I think that the only issue you'd run into with specificity is time. I understand, that there's a tendency in English to overanalyze, like, oh, but the wallpaper was the color green for this particular reason, or like, oh, their shoes are a deeper symbol for like the conflict within the character. But you're not really going to have that option here. So I'd say focus on rhetorical devices, focus on the evidence and reasoning the author uses, and we should be in good shape. You won't have to analyze like when the author uses like this word, it makes this deep fed single. So stay away from I'd say overly Freudian analysis. Stay away from some Jungian archetypes, and you should be in good shape. Just focusing on the author does this technique to make this happen.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Now the part that everyone over exaggerates, but still important, is we have to analyze the we're going to be scored on our writing style. So this is where we come into play. So first thing, do we have cohesive writing? Awesome. Keep it together. Do we have a command of language? Notice what they're saying is about a highly effective use in command of language. It's not just enough to have, this is not the time to like overly flex vocabulary if it's going to be awkward and clumsy. Get your point across. Don't make grammatical mistakes. Focus on the other pieces first. Precise central claim. Boom! You need to establish in the first paragraph the author uses X, Y, and Z as goals to make this, that, and the other happen for the audience. I would not spend time, and we're going to talk about this later, but like your introduction should not be overly flowery. Just get right to, the author does this, this, and this to make this point. Now, they do mention, though, a skillful introduction and conclusion. Notice they did not say tear-jerking. Notice they did not say, deeply stirring. They said skillful. So just demonstrate that you know how to open the paragraph, demonstrate you know how to close the essay. Let's see here. And notice that the big part is that people forget progression of ideas. You must outline first, organize your ideas, and keep in mind that it is not a bad thing to be overly structured in these essays. You're demonstrating to your judge that yes, I can indeed recognize structure and write with structure. Oh man, all these use of I and we. I'm thinking that we should have added it to the. Oh my gosh, we should have added that to the list of rhetorical devices. The idea of inclusion. When the author uses a bunch of I's and we's, and you think like, oh, the author gets me, me, that kind of thing. Isn't that the new hot meme now? It me. I've seen it like 4 or 5 times. Anyway. When we get into the writing task, we also want to focus on, this is interesting, a wide variety of sentence structures. This may not seem like an impressive piece. You've probably never read a paper and said, man, that variety of sentence structure was crazy. Long, medium, long, short. I didn't know what they were going to do. However, let's say this. Ron, have you ever read a piece and recognized the lack of variety in sentence structure?
Yeah,
Oh, how so? What did it look like?
like really bad. I don't know how else to say.
It's just bad, right? Yeah. Both extremes are horrible here. So if your writing is too choppy, if it sounds like see spot run, if it's all subject verb object, it's gonna make your reader sound like kind of childish. At the same time, we should still think about the idea that you occasionally have to end a sentence or two, right? Don't make your writing overly flowy, don't make it overly pedantic, because it'll be easy for the reader to get lost in your point. I would say take an example from some of the great orators of history. When you're proving a point, make it a longer sentence. Get into the detail. Rub your author's face in it. See? Do you see how I prove this? But when you're stating a claim, make it short. Think about Martin Luther King. What does everyone remember? No one remembers the longer sentences. Everyone remembers, I have a dream. Because of repetition and because of inclusive language. Now, next piece we want to look at, formal style. I don't think there'll be an issue for most of us. Avoid those first-person pronouns. Objective tone. And notice they're not saying impressive word choice. They are saying precise word choice. Do not write a word with the wrong connotation. I'm sure we've all seen The Princess Bride. You keep using that word. It does not mean what you think it means. Okay, and of course, this is the really interesting one. Don't spend I don't need you to, fine tooth your essay until you've written it all and if you have time to evaluate it. Notice, guys, we're saying free or virtually free of errors. So long as your point is not a distraction, we don't need to overly stress about like a misplaced comma. We do not need to go back through and man, did I have any, ambiguous pronouns? Just make sure that the meaning is clear. Okay? Now, I'm going to take, since we're mostly in Camp SAT, and I want to get to an SAT essay example, we're going to spend a brief amount of time looking at the ACT rubric. But for now, overall, how comfortable do we feel with what the College Board is looking for? Do you understand where those points are coming from, like what the judges want to see? Ooh, okay. So out of, all right. Okay, so out of everyone voting, looks like we are, okay, we are all there, and it looks like, dang, we're looking pretty strong on this one. Wonderful. Mode is a 4 out of 5. Median is a 4 out of 5. Mean is going to be like 3.83. I think we'll probably feel a lot better about this after we've seen an example. And I'll tell you that one of the essays we'll look at today, we'll take a look at a flawless one. We'll take a look at something that earned 4s across the board. But let us move on. The ACT rubric. Bum, bum, bum. This one's a little bit more complicated because there's a score of 6 per category. So the ACT actually gives a little bit more nuance for their scoring. To get a 4, they are looking for 4 big pieces. So they're looking for ideas and analysis. So more of like what your idea is. Did you come up with a quality idea, and did you put thought and purpose into it? The biggest things that I would look for here would be, if we're looking for the idea of nuance, make sure you have a qualified claim. Don't just say like all X are bad or all X are good. Say something like, all X are good when these conditions are met, or X is good if and only if this happens. So if you're arguing something like, college sports are bad, that's not a nuanced viewpoint. Try to address complexities in the issue, implications. So we could say something like, college sports are good so long as they bring more focus on academics, and so long as the school maintains its focus as like a research institution or an educational piece. You could say something like that. Development and support. This is the big one. So are you backing up your ideas, and did you build them well? So in the case of like in a solid 6 for development and support, you want to make sure that you have bolstering of your ideas through your examples. Make sure that when you build your ideas that you show insight. And there we go. Okay, now organization is the interesting one. So try to have a controlling idea or purpose, aka let that thesis ride. Have a logical progression of ideas that is effective and makes your argument better. And, transitions. Got to have those transitions. You'll notice that the ACT is like a little bit more direct about what they're looking for, because they are not looking for the analytical task. They are looking for you building and developing your own idea. And of course, language uses. So just think about all those things that we talked about in class, right? So I would say consider strongly, did I have any, misplaced modifiers? Did I have any, pronouns that, had an incorrect usage? Dang, did I, use a gerund and call it plural? Small stuff. All right, any questions on the ACT rubric? Now, the one thing that's kind of interesting here, whereas the SAT rubric was like a total sum of all your pieces, the ACT rubric is an aggregate score, so they'll actually give an average for all 4 of your pieces. But that makes sense because you know where the ACT overall score comes from anyway, right? They take the average of all 4 sections. So there we go. All right, now as far as like some last measures that we'd want to address, I did want to show you guys something about the scoring breakdown before we dive in. So looking at the percentiles for the essay, this is really wild. So if we look at like your reading, your analysis, and your writing for the SAT, you'll notice that like even if you get a score of 3 from both authors, and remember 3 is acceptable, it puts you in the 92nd percentile for reading, 96th for analysis, and 93rd for writing. And this is like for like the acceptable, like you did okay. So really, do you notice the big thing I want you to take away is you have a massive advantage if you understand how to write the essay. If you understand what's going to get you those scores, you can stand out of the crowd immensely. Most people, in fact, notice this, even if you got 2s for an analysis, you got 2s in both counts, that would still put you at the 67th percentile. You still, like, you're pushing like a full standard deviation above the rest. How wild is that? So something that I would strongly, strongly urge you, when you write the essay, just keep in mind analysis is going to be a bit challenging, but worth it. So what do you think? Hopefully that makes you feel a little more confident, right? That this data came from the College Board. I know a few people have done analyses on these. Like I know was it like College Compass or whatever has done a pretty thorough analysis of the essay and like the deeper percentiles. But yeah, if you know how to fit the rubric, we're good. Now, as far as general tasks, I don't want to tell you guys how to, rewrite the rule. You're writing essays all the time. Let's focus on a couple things. First off, please, for the love of Pete, organize that essay. Just take the extra. And here's the problem. It's one thing to say, it's another to understand it. Guys, I know that when they start that clock, you're going to feel the pressure to start writing. For all we know, everyone around you is going to have their pencils flurrying. You're going to have to fight the urge like, oh my gosh, how are they writing their essays? I'm still working on my outline. That's okay. Take the first few minutes and outline your idea. Think about, okay, what rhetorical techniques are the strongest? How do I want to follow through? And what examples do I want to use that justify those points? Like I said, don't waste time in a flowery introduction. Just get down to work. You don't have to, start with like, in the course of human history. Come on, we're out of here. This is a timed essay. You don't have time for that. Another piece that is really easy to forget in the scope of the timed essay: transitions are life. This will improve your writing score and improve your overall readability, which is something that we need on every front. And remember, the essays are geared, particularly on the SAT, toward rewarding depth. So remember, think about audience effect. If you can use evidence, make sure we have a warrant for it. Make sure we give it. If you are familiar with like the Tolman method of argument, it's not just enough to give evidence for a claim. You need to state why that evidence matters. And my last one: avoid avoid the abrupt conclusion. Now, what we're going to say is the College Board knows you're on a time crunch, okay? The College Board knows you're on a time crunch, but just keep an eye on the clock so that you can at least, like, if you get a 5-minute warning or if you know you're like 2 minutes away, just wrap the idea up as quickly as you can, okay? Ooh, oh, Byron, free, Byron, what do you think?
In the introduction, like how long should that be? Like, should it just be like our thesis and then like something else, or like a?
Yeah, I would say a sentence or two.
Okay,
Establish your claim that
awesome.
the author effectively argues their idea through the use of X, Y, and Z. General so and so makes excellent points to advocate for blah blah blah. Admittedly, I do love kind of flexing a little bit on on the terminology there. Don't say that people are arguing or saying they're advocating for an idea. So there we go. All right, guys. Now it is that time. Since we have about half an hour, we're gonna take a quick 2-minute break, and then guess what? SAT scoring. We are going to use those rubrics that we took on. And oh my gosh, sorry. The screen. I have like 3 of these red screens facing me, so I now probably look like looking a little red here. But that's okay. We're gonna take a quick 2-minute break, and then we are going to score some essays together. Right? Are you ready to get a little judgmental? Let's go. All right, so I'll see you in 2 minutes. Let's get back to our SAT essays. What? So what I have for you here is an essay that if you've seen it, bear with me. But I have a little bit of essay practice. So can everyone see the 2-page prompt here on the screen? Now this was an essay that sadly some students had to face down for their analytical task. Bum bum bum. So I want you to take a quick, maybe say like 3 to 5 minutes. I'm gonna set a timer here, and so let's see if in 3 minutes you can just give a quick skim of the passage and see if you can make note of some of the analytical devices. Okay? Go. Take 3 minutes and give it a good read. So let me know in the chat when you've got a chance to skim through. Hmm. Mhm. All right. Okay, so let's talk about what we have here. So, if I was going to ask us in general, for the sake of time, what sort of rhetorical devices do you see Dana using here to make her point?
I saw some repetition.
Ooh, yes, there are a couple of words that she's a big fan of. It seems decline, decline, decline. There are a couple of other arguments that I put forth too. Notice the word choice that she uses, right? So she mentions the idea of like, income is not just high, it's at unforeseen levels. We mentioned that there's like a little bit of drama, right? That we talk about like the changes in aptitude. I think our nation becomes less informed, active, and independent-minded. There's even like a little bit of exaggeration, right? These are things that we as a free society can't afford to lose. What else do you see as far as ways that the data makes the claim?
Probably like lots of like references to like national organizations, right? It's like they say the National Association of
Yeah, see,
Manufacturers, and the National Conference of State Legislature. Like it's citing like an acclaimed organization, and like the fact that it's national would probably like give it more credibility because you know that it's a statistic that's like pervasive to lots of people, not just like one specific demographic.
exactly. This isn't just like Delaware. This is some national clout. Wired magazines, so authors. Now, even if we look at the idea of like, ooh, look at all these national fronts, that definitely seems to be something that the author is, not just making, the authors are just shouting in the darkness. They're clearly bolstering their claims. All right, so we got some appeals to logos. We've got some emotional appeals, strong wording choices, some repetition. Anything else we can tag in? Or would you be interested in seeing what other readers saw in the essay? All right, so here's the challenge, guys. What we are going to do now is I'm going to give you an essay that was actually written by some other poor soul who had to face down the College Board. So someone read this essay, they wrote their own response on it, and your job is going to be to read this essay, and I want 3 scores from you. So I want a score for reading. How well did the author demonstrate that they understood the essay? Analysis, did they understand the analytical task? And for writing, how well did the author construct an argument altogether? So take about let's say like 3 to 5 minutes, read through this student-produced prompt, and we'll go from there. right, so remember, we said 4 was exceptional, 3 is acceptable, 2 is lacking a little bit, and 1 is just a hot mess. Okay. Ooh, we got our first score in. So our first guess of the night. Oh, I appreciate the bravery. Our first guess was a four. Ooh, let me get my marker back out here. So we have a couple of options. We have a 4-3-3. Ooh, we have a pessimistic 3-2-2. A 4-3-4. Ah, a little bit of doubt in the analytic task. Okay. 4-2-3. Ooh, bold. I like it. Okay, we have a correction. 4-3-2. Okay. 4-2-4. Ooh, this is interesting. I like this. Okay, so let's take a look. Now, out of the set here, I think we have all but one. Oh, and 4-3-3. Wonderful. A lot of people really like the reading on this. Okay, so let's talk about this. Sreya, do you think the author demonstrated a strong use of reading? Did they demonstrate to you that they clearly understood the passage?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me some evidence for that? Like, what did you like about this essay?
I just felt like he had a lot of evidence. Like, he brought up a lot of things from the passage.
Okay. So the author did use a lot of citation and paraphrasing. I think that did definitely demonstrate some understanding of the task. Moira, what do you think? Did the author stick with the kind of the party line interpretation? Do you feel like they understood the nuances of the author of Dana's argument?
I felt like they understood like the main idea. I think they kind of could have gone into like the nuances a little bit more, like the part where it was like the political, like and the other like impacts of not reading. I mean, I skimmed it, but I didn't really see it super addressed. But like the main idea was definitely there.
They missed a little bit of nuance, but this was still enough to earn a 4 from the College Board. So the official score is a 4 for reading. Boom. So that means that both authors, like I guess technically an 8, but like both authors or both judges who read this gave it a 4 for reading. Pow. Now it's interesting because the writing scores are kind of all over the place. We actually drench from like 2 to 4. So let's talk about this. What are some things that the author did well as far as the writing task, as far as how they themselves wrote the essay? Did they have a precise central claim? Chapin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, like they had a thesis. I was thinking like when I was thinking about the writing, like what he did well, or she, like I just noticed like the like sentence structure was good. Like he's like active voice and like uses author states, which is like a good way to like be precise. And he uses like quotes, but also paraphrasing and pretty like I mean pretty good like word choice, but could have been like a little maybe like the transitions could have been a little bit better.
Okay. Well, let's say this. So if we go through the list, I would say they had a claim. They transitioned at least a little bit. It wasn't like they weren't amazing transitions and conclusions. Like the author only really had to transition between 2 paragraphs. Let's see here. I don't think it's as explicitly laid out organizationally as I'd like. Like, was anyone else expecting like they gave like this like kind of cool like 3-pronged thesis, and I think they could have gone a little further with that, but that's more of an analysis thing than a writing thing. Was the essay cohesive? On topic? Deliberate progression of ideas? Did they goof anywhere grammatically? Or let's say this, even if they did have an error or two, the important thing is these errors were not noticeable. This scored a 4 for writing. Throw some surprised Pikachu face, right? Now, what this tells us is that Hoon, Alexander, and I have been holding you to a very high standard, and you should be proud of your own work if you gave this less than a 4. I would strongly encourage you, though, to keep in mind they had notable vocabulary, sentence structure was fairly diverse, word choice was pretty precise. Overall, I'd say this demonstrated the author has some writing chops. Maybe not the best example, but still worthwhile.
I have like a question.
Oh, fire away, Tarek. What do you think?
Like especially in like the first paragraph, I feel like they're touching on like the logos and like ethos of the author. But I feel like it would be better if they, instead of just writing all of these quotes, they talked about like why these quotes showed ethos and like the actual like where they got the quotes from, because she got them from like a government source. Or wait, he got them
The
from a
author.
government.
Yeah, we have no clue. At least with Dana Gioia, I had to look it up, and that's like a good example. Like when we talked about like using they as a singular pronoun. Like man, I don't know who this is. But the thing is, this author is just like some masked anonymous author the College Board threw at us. We have no clue. For all we know, this could be like some AI that did it. But you're right, Tarek. I think organizationally, it would be nice if the author was a little more specific here. But that's less of an issue with writing. It's more of an issue with analysis. So what we think about is, remember, writing, we're just looking like how does the author of this essay put together and deliver their points. The analysis is looking at, did the author demonstrate how well Dana Gioia put together the essay. Now the analysis scores, no one gave this essay a 4. Nobody. So let's talk about this. What didn't we like? Rohan, was there anything? Where's your beef with this author?
I felt after they used the quotes, there was a lot of restating and not like a lot of like analysis, like going a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Like for example, they would like sometimes they would also repeat sentences or like close in meaning sentences.
Yeah. So you think the author was just kind of leaning on repetition to fill out the essay?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a very astute observation. Let's see here. Chapin, anything you didn't like?
I do think it could have been like if he had just added like they just added like maybe like a sentence or something when they would make like their big claims. Like for instance, when he describes again, like kind of what Tara was saying about like when they mentioned the like the national organizations, like I would have if I had time, they probably rushed. Like I would have maybe added like like the use of these like national organizations gives more credibility to it because they're like well known and stuff. And then when they say like when they mention like the words used like ballooned, enormously unforeseen, maybe saying like what, not just like that they use it, but like what does that signify?
Oh,
What does
that
that
is a very astute point. I'm glad you agreed, and I'm glad that we have actually like evidence to back it up. Because if you didn't, I would have called you out because it's exactly what you were calling the author out on. All right, Navia, what do you think? Do you agree with Tarek and Chapin's criticisms? The author kind of skimped out a little bit.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
All right, Prisha, what do you think? Are you sipping on the haterade with this author? Did they do? How do you think they did with the analysis?
I don't think they did that good just because they was like it was a lot of repetition. If they cut out the repetition, the essay would have been a lot shorter.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, it's weird. I remember with the essay when it was out of 2400, the old essay format, there was a strong correlation between length of essay and score, which is kind of tragic. Now, the one thing I find particularly interesting is, yeah, if they would have cut the repetition out, this would have been a lot skimpier because I think we're on the same page. The author does not do a solid job justifying the points. I think the author recognized a lot of the author recognized a lot of rhetorical techniques and methods, but the author didn't back up like how they were done. The author didn't tell us about. Do you see audience effect really through here? There's not a lot of audience effect, is there? The author did okay. I'd say in this case, the author saw a lot of good things, but the author didn't follow through. The author spent a lot of time on offense, but didn't really get a lot of points. This essay, you guys gave it a 2 point. So on an aggregate score, you gave this essay a reading score of, let's see here. Oh, actually, I might as well go with the order that I had them pulled up. So your scores, your aggregate analysis was 2.5. As far as overall scores, you gave it a reading score of 3.8. And as far as writing scores, this could be very interesting. All right, and you gave it an overall 3 for writing. Now, not bad. This essay for analysis earned a 3. It did okay. Now, some of you might even be thinking like, wait, excuse me, what? Because if we look at if you remember how the scoring worked, this essay would have done remarkably well, wouldn't it? Keep in mind, this essay would have been a 99th percentile score for reading, a 96th percentile score for analysis, and a 99th percentile score for writing. And here we are saying, they did okay. They did all right. I love it. Now, overall, our greater goal today was to have everyone be far more familiar with the techniques needed to score well in the essay, familiarity with the scoring nuances to understand what it means to get that 4, and some of the general strategies to help organize our time and be a little more efficient. So I'm going to throw up one last poll here. So overall, when it comes to the SAT essay, how are we feeling? Give me a 5 if you're going to go knock that author's socks off. Give me a 1 if you're going to go home and change your registration. Oh, nice. Okay, 1 5 6 4s. I love this. Now, something else that I would like to offer. I'm going to send everyone tonight. I'm going to send everyone a sample essay. And if you'd like, I would be more than happy if you want to write an essay on that prompt and score it. So just to go back into our wrap up here, because I know we're a little over time, but that's okay. I'd rather that we cover everything deeply, and hopefully no one had anything going on at 7 o'clock tonight. Okay, so just in case you needed it one more time, a little bit of contact info. So reach out, tell your friends. We'll be recording this essay. You can send the link out if you'd like. We are going to be continuing to support everyone. So I know the October test wrapped up, but November, December coming up. Let us know what we can do to support you. Okay. Everyone at Pittsburgh Prep is here, clearly because we care about the money and the fame, because we care about you growing as students. Okay. So I'll send the essay out. It might take me a couple days to get back to you with a solid score. I'll be as pessimistic as possible, so you're well prepared for the essay. But reach out, tell your friends, and actually, there were a couple of other things. I don't know if you guys heard, we actually have, and I think we talked about Robert earlier, we have an honest to goodness admissions essay guru. So Robert's helped students get into the Ivy Leagues. He's helped students get into the Oxbridge universities. So if you are interested, I think we're offering free 30-minute consultations on your admissions essays. Details are on the website pittsburghprep.com. What? Additionally, we have a contest going tomorrow for some Pittsburgh Prep swag. I don't know if you guys noticed the Fleek hoodie I'm wearing. Got a logo on the back in case you really want to nerd out. It's the unicorn logo from the summer. I don't care about your school. I got a unicorn on my shirt. Now, if you're interested, just keep an eye on the Instagram there, and of course, don't forget there is another Insta Pittsburgh Prep memes. We're bringing that one back. So if you want to see some good tongue-in-cheek English and math jokes, feel free to join. But in the meantime, does anyone have any questions about anything that I can help with?
Oh, wait, I
Everyone,
have a question.
yes.
Oh, so like that last essay was like only 2 paragraphs, kind of. Is that like standard of 2 paragraphs or?
Somebody used to the 5-paragraph format. Yep.
Yeah.
I would say the 3-paragraph piece, what I'd see here is probably likely is the author, took the time to do a quick introduction, separated that as a paragraph, didn't really consider ooh, I should have broken down 1 paragraph for each of the points that I put in my thesis. That's perfectly fine. Because even though the author only had 3 paragraphs, they still demonstrated pretty strong organization. I'd say they did okay on that front. Will a 5-paragraph essay serve you? Yeah. If you don't have time for that though, yeah, just move on. I would say just make sure you have a separate conclusion paragraph. So I'd say 3 minimum. 5 would be nice, but 3 minimum.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No worries. Anything else? All right. Well, in that case, guys, we'll see.
I had a question.
Oh, fire away! Yes, we love questions.
This doesn't exactly have to do with the essay, but I was just wondering why more people score a perfect score on the ACT than the SAT.
Ooh, that is a good question, Prisha. Well, the ACT does have a little bit of leeway in the scoring. So with the SAT, the scoring is a complete aggregate where they're going to tally all of your scores together. So when you get that thick 1600, it's 800 and 800, and there's no room for error. With the ACT, the score is an average. So they call it a composite score. So when you get when someone when someone says they have a score of 36, that could actually have been a score of 35.5, which means you actually get a little bit of leeway. Now, both the College Board and the ACT scale their scores and normalize them, so there are some pieces of leeway here. Like, okay, full disclosure, the last time I took the SAT, I completely forgot to fill in a couple of questions in the reading section. I thought I was going to have to turn in my resignation, like who was going to fire me, but I still ended up with an 800 from the scaling. For another example, let's see here. From another example, what was I gonna say? Like the math in the October SAT had a completely vicious scale. So even missing one question knocked 30 points off your score. So both tests are scaled, but the ACT does get a little bit more generous because of the fact that they do aggregate scoring. So you could actually score, like, out of the four, you could score 36, 36, 36, and 34, and still end up with a quote unquote perfect score.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. I love this stuff. Okay, anything else, guys? All right. Well, in that case, I'll be here for you, and have a great week.